Hello and welcome. It is Tuesday. It is 5 o'clock. That means it's time to hit the happy hour at the Old Timer Tavern. I am one of the two hosts, Rob, aka Lantern Noir, and I am quietly imbibing an Ironfish Distillery maple whiskey. And joining me is.
Graybeard at Graybeard Tavern, and I've got the Coke Zero and bourbon, my usual.
We are old. That's just the way that works.
We're well seasoned. We're like a good whiskey.
Have you seen the memes where they have all the various game controllers and they say pick the one that was your first, and you're looking for that joystick with the one button on it, and you're like, mine's not even on here.
The teeny little Atari click, 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 get ground to pieces after a while.
Yeah, well, really, it was 5 buttons.
Mm-hmm.
It was the up button, down button, left and right, and then the actual trigger button. You could take it apart and just push the buttons to get the same effect as moving the joystick. Apple was big because they had the gradiated one.
Ooh.
That was like a huge deal when Apple launched that. But although we shouldn't spend too long talking video game.
All right. Yeah, that was a couple weeks ago or something.
Yeah, which, by the way, we got some feedback on. If you check out episode 26, we go through a collection of ideas about what kind of board games you play if you're not going to play D&D. And we got some comments on YouTube that I'm just going to do a quick shout out to at the top of the hour, which was the gentleman posted that he never gets bored with D&D, so he has no need of board games. And if somebody doesn't show up, you go to the DM's Guide or Random Dungeon Maker, and you do that. Which I'm like, hey, more power to you if that's your jam. It even got me thinking about how it might be kind of fun to do like a Thursday night Monster of the Week D&D stream.
Right.
Like, everyone show up with an X level character. I'm going to go find an XCR monster, and then we'll see if you can kill it.
Dun, dun, dun. 40 by 40 room.
Exactly. Has to be the right people though, because that's the kind of thing that can be a little dry.
Yeah.
But those are fun. This week, on topic, kids and Dungeons and Dragons. I see this a lot. I've seen it a couple times on the Twitter. I see it a lot more in the Facebook group I'm on for Dungeons and Dads. And it's a lot of, hey, I'm a dad. My kid just turned 3. Can we start playing D&D? One guy pointed out that he saw that his 6-month-old was able to pick up a D20. That meant he could roll initiative, and it was time to start playing Dungeons and Dragons.
There are baby pictures of my oldest in her like rocker swing at the table with the rest of us. You know, we're all playing D&D, and then we bought her big dice.
Yep.
So she couldn't gulp them, but she could definitely bang them on the tray, and that lasted about 3 minutes. And it was like, yep, okay,
that's a little loud.
Soft toys.
Soft toys. Well, they have those foam ones.
Mm-hmm.
You get those big foam D20s. Azteki, take notes.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
And they're cuddly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest here. I'm going to plug the plushy dice because babies will cuddle anything. And we have every year I get my Facebook memory of the night that I was putting Kaylee down. It's like, okay, here's your passy, here's your swaddle, here's your sharky, go to sleep.
Right.
And she's all wrapped up around this little great white shark stuffy she had. So we also have pictures of her cuddling up with a calculator.
I grew up with a very manly man father, and I never had a stuffed animal until I was in high school, and I won a stuffed animal shark at a county fair, like throwing a ball or tossing rings or whatever. And that's the only stuffed animal really that I had owned until, I don't know, 10 years ago. I think somebody got me a Beanie Baby Rhino, and I think those are the only 2 stuffed animals I've ever owned in my life. So
I don't want to comment on the number of stuffed animals in storage boxes in the house.
But between
no, not from the kids, just from me and Mrs. Noir.
from from Tavern Sparrow alone. We moved them, we've been moving these these same totes of stuffed animals for 30 years from her house that she grew up in to our apartments to our storage to here to houses to finally their final resting place here in the tavern.
Amen to that. So just to kind of let's talk pedigree for a second. The teen in the house is freshly turned 13. And then the Kitty K, who many people who follow the stream have actually seen on stream with me, has just this past January turned 9. So those are the ages that I'm working with and have worked with as my own. And then, well, I started DMing when we both started as kids.
Right.
So we've had a chance to be teens playing Dungeons and Dragons, as well as having the opportunity to work with other people's kids.
Yeah.
Through various capacities. How is the tavern stocked, I guess would be the question. Staffed.
So
Staffed is a better way to put it.
March, one turned 17, and 5 days ago, the other one turned 15.
Wow.
So, happy birthday.
You, two teenagers, and Tavern Sparrow.
Yep.
Good God, my man.
And 2 cats, what is about to become 3. The youngest's best friend has to. Yeah, it's a whole tragic story. Anyway, we won't tell the tragedy. Hit me up on Twitter if you want to hear that story. But we're adopting their cat as taking them in as if they are part of our family. We've always said this other child is part of our family, and so now we're keeping the cat for them.
That happens. We adopted a cat when our friend decided she needed to do a cross-country trip and relocate to Seattle.
Yep.
And then she came back 2.5 years later and said, I'd like my cat back. And the cat looked at her, vomited on her shoes, and left. We went, I don't think you're getting your cat back. Cat does not appear to be on board with this. We have forgiven you for taking off on a half a day's notice and leaving us your cat. She, on the other hand, seems to be holding a grudge.
So a friend of mine, his father passed. He had to go back to India, right? Mm-hmm. For the whole thing. So he gave us his cat. His cat died of feline leukemia while he was in India taking care of his father. It was so, broken heart crushing. We were like, we didn't do it. It wasn't us.
Yeah. Last thought on pets, and then we should talk about D&D and kids.
Sure.
This is an important safety tip and suggestion from Lantern Noir Presents. You can write into your will, and probably should, how you want your pets taken care of in the unfortunate event of your passing. If you do not, then it completely falls to your family to make those decisions after you're gone. Your lawyer can set funds from your estate aside for the care and well-being of those pets for a period of time. They can do it. They know how to do it. It shows that you love your pets when you prepare for them as well as the rest of your family. The more you
That's
know,
amazing.
Lantern Noir Presents cares.
I need a star to go with the rainbow. Woo.
Yeah, we did that. And the lawyer was like, oh, yeah, I guess we could write that in there. And then he's like, drilling up. But things to think about. So I guess the first thing to think about with the kids is, how old do you start playing a role-playing game versus start talking about, versus just let's pretend and talk?
So for us here at the tavern, we because we had the disparity between the ages, we started with a game it's a free online game. It's called Dungeon Squad. And I don't know if somebody actually publishes it now, but back then it was it was just a couple pages, and we used to play. There would be two other dads, me, both of them had boys playing, and then my 2 girls. So it'd be 4 kids, 2 dads, and me DMing. And that I want to say M's was 9 and Ara was 7.
Okay.
So right between where I started playing actual D&D, because I was like 8 when I started playing D&D. So but yeah, we started them with that kind of taught them the dice and the basics of role play and stuff. So and the advice we give definitely like is pertinent to those different age ranges, because what you're going to do with a 7, a couple of 9-year-olds and a 5-year-old is way different than what you do with 10s and 12s, because
Yes, absolutely. Well, because they're at a different place with their content.
mm-hmm.
They're just, they have a different headspace for what's going on, and they can think in different terms. One thing I would kind of throw out as we're talking about how ready kids are for different aspects of Dungeons and Dragons and similar tabletop RPGs is to remember that everything we do at the tabletop RPG is still abstracted. And it's still described. It's still metaphorical.
Yeah.
You don't have to talk. One thing I think we lose, what we forget, because of the D&D's roots in wargaming, hit points don't have to be wound points.
Right.
There, you can really just say that's a measure of how tired you are.
Right.
And when you run out of hit points, you need to sit down because you're tired.
Right.
You're worn out trying to fight the goblins or protect yourself from the goblins or outrun the goblins. You're out of hit points. You need to sit down. And you'll see that on like My Little Pony episode, the idea of getting too tired from fighting or from doing good deeds.
A good friend of Indoors channel, B-Brace, he has a game that's a superhero game that's called Power Outage, and we did the first ever streamed game of it on Indoors channel. And yeah, it's more for kids. It's very punny and stuff, and it really, yeah, once you know your kids and your age group, like for instance, when we finished playing Dungeon Squad and Ara was maybe 10ish. Yeah, I'm pretty sure she was about 10. We switched over to 5th edition D&D, and yeah, she was all about not killing, So we kept saying that they got little X's over their eyes and swirled off into the medical tent over here, and we used to draw on the battle map a little medical tent. And so then everybody would go to the medical tent when they died, because she wasn't ready for, the bigger drama quite yet.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and that varies a lot by kids. I think Kitty K, because she's grown up watching an older brother play video games, and we probably could have been better with both kids about going, that's kind of a more grown up game. You shouldn't see that. I still remember playing The Witcher one Saturday, and she came down. I was like on the couch playing on the iPad while I was playing, and I'm like, this isn't so bad. We're fighting demons. We're fighting demons. Oh, we're gonna meet a pretty redhead girl. That'll be kind of fun. Oh my god. and thankfully, she was looking down at that moment. So when I turned off the television, suddenly she's like, "What did I miss?" I'm like, "Dad'll find out later." But she was kind of like thinking more in terms of some of that stuff because of that earlier exposure.
Yeah. Yep.
Age is Lord. The other one I did, if we talk about like straight up kids RPGs, we played Hero Kids in our house for a while. I linked it in the chat, and I'll put these in our show notes on YouTube later. Hero Kids is another one. It's not free. You do have to buy it, but it's not. I think it's like $20 on Drive Through RPG.
Yeah.
And you get a couple of adventures, and they're like designed to be the starter Dungeons and Dragons game. Like it's very much in that direction of you're going to be like, it gives you heroes like warlocks and rogues and brutes and knights. So it's very much lined up with D&D as far as design goes, but then it's just super simplified down. The mechanics are abilities that you have good at, you have dice for, and everything is done with a 6-sider. So like the one they have on here, the knight has 3 dice for protection and 1 die for attacking, and has 3 boxes for injuries.
Got it.
And that's it. Like, you know, the monster rolls its attack, you roll your defense, the higher total wins.
Yeah. The Dungeon Squad had basically, you placed your dice, the 20 wasn't used, but the other dice were, and you had 1 of each. And so you got to decide if you wanted to be good at stealth or, you know, strength or magic, you know, and you got to put your dice in, and then you had 2 pieces of equipment or attacks that you put the last 2 dice in. So you had like 6 dice, and you would choose how you wanted to build your character and stuff. So you had some choices with that. That was really cute. And then we took and I modified it to do. So we had 100 plus of the Superhero Squad show figures.
Perfect.
So I took Dungeon Squad and changed it up and created Superhero Squad for the tabletop.
Yep.
And so we used to build elaborate cities, and you know, the dads and the boys would all come over, and I'm Hulk Smash, and you could break through the, you know, take blocks away for buildings being broken, and the city would lay in ruins and such. One of the big things was we would play a real game, you know, a codified game for about an hour or 2, you know, and then the dads would walk away, start barbecuing out in the driveway, holding a beer or whatever, you know, just shooting the stuff. And then the kids were just, you know, allowed to go to the multiple shelves of miniatures and stuff and just play. So there would be times, you know, at the end of the night when, you know, the kids were, you know, falling asleep, and the dads would like carry them to the car kind of thing. And my gaming table down here was just like every piece of castle and terrain and everything that I've ever built or had, you know, just piled. So it was always so fun to just watch them play, you know, and stuff. So,
well, and that's a caution I've often thrown out to people when they're like, oh, I want to get my kid into this. How soon is too soon? Is that balancing act between, because really Dungeons and Dragons at its heart is make believe. We're all going to sit around, we're going to pretend, and we're going to talk about what we're pretending. It just has a lot of rules attached to it. And so there's this like, how ready where are your kids at with the codification of things? Now that said, I think the sooner you can expose them, the better, because I think there are a lot of good skills that come with it. So games that are good, I mean, if you want to start with a starter game, a kid's game, it really doesn't matter which one you pick, because it's that sitting around the table, you have a little sheet with a bio on it. And even like you could even start not having a rule system.
Right.
Write down some things about your character. Right. Okay. Now what do you think is going to happen if this happens? All right. So tell me what you think happens, and get into that, describing what the character is doing, you know, describing the scene around them, and even little things like introducing the concept of the dice as do you think you made it? I don't know. And, you know,
let's roll a die.
let's let the dice decide. Is really what D&D is at its core, and then you can kind of go from there. Kitty K was, I think, 7 the first time she played D&D at the table as D&D. Now that was also 4th edition, and then we had I had foolishly, I think in hindsight, created like easy guides. Yeah. On your turn, here's what you can do. Pick something. And in hindsight, what I really should have done is just kept all that stuff to myself, because we We had the 7-year-old and we had the 71-year-old at the table. What I should have just said is, tell me what you think happens, what you want to try to do. And then I just look at their character sheet and go, okay, go ahead and roll that D20. Yeah, the big one. What'd you get? Okay. Here's what happens.
Right.
And do all the mechanics behind the table, because I think if you know the game mechanic you want to use, you can still keep the story going.
Right.
And you can ease them into learning how the mechanics work.
Yeah.
Seki raised the idea of teaching his niece, who's 8, how to play. So before we talk about D&D with littler kids as D&D, I do want to talk about other people's kids.
Okay.
Have you had that experience of having other people's kids at your table and stuff?
Yeah, the 2 dads and the 2 boys. And the differences in the 2 parenting styles of those 2 boys was very different. And it was one of the things that eventually when we were playing with the oldest boy separately in Pathfinder Society, it became too stressful for me to keep playing in that group, because the dad would just tear into the son, and it just was way too much for me, and I'm not his parent, and I'm not, it's not my place and all this, and I'm just like, this is not a table I want to be at anymore. So it really affected things. But other people's kids always, I always just tried to be, the language, for instance, is, well, that's not the way we play here. When we get angry, we don't throw things, we don't, and I would just lay down some very basic, like you would if ever anybody's kids were at your house, Yep. Well, I'm sorry, but if you can't play by the nice rules, you can't come next time we play D&D, or Dungeon Squad or whatever.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, well, permission's a no-brainer, right? As a Stecky pops in there. Obviously, you do that, but I think there's something too with understanding how everyone defines their terms. And I say that because when Xander when our teen was in their was around 10ish, we were playing Hero Kids. We just introduced him to it, so I think he was 9.
Yeah.
And he had a neighbor boy that he played with a lot that was a year younger, and I said, this would be might be fun to have your friend play with us. And they had played board games together. They actually they had taken out, and together they had gotten through a game of Castles of Mad King Ludwig.
Oh.
For the most part, they had successfully navigated it with a little bit of dad leaning over and going, okay, so here's what happens next. You guys have to decide. And once I did that 3 times, they were like, off.
Got it.
And I texted the mom and said, we might be playing a D&D like kids game. Do you think your son would be okay with that? And she went, no, thank you. And I went, okay. No problem. We won't do that. And I was looking at the D&D adventure board games at the time.
Right.
As well, which the teen had played with me up to that point. But I think part of that, too, was, what does that mean? And so having that conversation about, what when you say we're going to play some D&D or a D&D-like game, well, what does that mean? And being sure you know what you're hoping to see happen at the table, and you're communicating that.
Right. Particularly if you're communicating with, I never had, it's the Devil's Board Game in chat. Yeah. Yep. And I was chased as a 9-year-old. I was chased out of a friend's house for playing D&D, but that was the 80s. So, but I mean, she was screaming, you're a little monster. How dare you bring that into my home, and physically chased me from their home. But that was like height of satanic panic.
Yeah. Which is interesting, because I think games like Hero Kids, you could probably put in front of somebody and say, we're going to play this storytelling game.
Right.
And you get a lot more bang for your buck as you're planning it. So there's that side of it too. Is when you're thinking about the ages and you think about what's age appropriate. I
Kids
also
on brooms, kids on bikes, you know.
yes. Well, the kids on bike system, I think, is it is. I can't wait to start running some games of it on stream because I think it's it's not as well known as it should be for how groundbreaking it is.
Right, right.
Because it is as mature as the players choose to make it.
Yeah, truth.
And it is as complicated as the players choose to. I mean, it's entirely up to the table
Yeah,
to decide because the rules are so streamlined
yeah.
and elegant. And even things like, the rolling a D8 versus a D4, that makes, yeah, you're more likely to roll high with a D8 than a D4, but it's meant to represent let's just toss a die and see what happens.
Right.
And a D20, yeah, you can get up to a 20, but half the time you're going to roll 10 or lower. So half the time you're right where that dude with the D10 lands.
Right.
So,
exactly.
It's not that great. And so it's a great game in that vein of we want to do a storytelling game.
Right.
We want to talk about a story. Here are some basic mechanics to get us going. And we can then kind of expose people to the idea of that shared experience with your character sheet in front of you that you read off of.
Yeah.
I kind of think as soon as kids can start to read, you can start to put character sheets in front of them.
Yep.
As soon as they can do math, you can start to put dice in front of them.
Yeah, and I think that's really really the limitation to that. And like I said, a lot of times, particularly like pre-COVID, you could put one bowl in the middle of the table with some felt in it, like a big bowl. I have a big wooden salad bowl that is yay big, like a dice tray. And then they would always be standing anyway. They'd never be sitting, so they would huck the dice. So if you had a tray, it would just skid off and fly into the ether of the tavern. So we had a bowl, and it would rattle around real nice and stuff, and everybody would watch the rolls. So it was very controlled. And one of the things that I didn't have space for on Twitter was maybe not even give them character sheets. Just explain to them who they are or whatever, or ask them who they are. And then they throw dice and you do all the math at first,
Well, and that for me looks back to the power of Hero Forge as one of the best tools for helping people brainstorm. Is you put a kid in front of that. Anyone who's used an iPad has the technical wherewithal to click and build something. And then you can look at, that's what, with Kitty K, that's how she started off as a Tiefling Warlock. Is why I looked at what she made and I went, well, there you go. That's a Tiefling Warlock. No doubt in my mind.
Yeah, same for Enna. She's got 20 or 30 characters that she started just by putting bits together and coming up with characters. And then we take the Hero Forge model and we try to okay, what's your story for this? Oh, well, let's give them 2 levels of wizard then so that they can get this spell. And so it's an exercise and fun for both of us to kind of create these, she creates them and then I just put the numbers to it or suggest how to put the numbers to it. And with D&D Beyond, it's never been easier for her to.
Yeah, I don't want to I can't plug them enough. We should at least have them pay our bar bill. For how often we talk about the convenience of using them. Well, even things like I'm running this game on Saturday, and someone needed a pre-gen because they weren't comfortable making their own, and it's a one shot. It'd be easier if you just make up a character for me to play, whatever. And I while I'm waiting to see the doctor, I put together a halfling fighter. Here you go. I'm going to introduce you to Robin Halfkeg, former brewer turned warrior. Yes. Now, they tried to call her Half Pint, and she knocked their teeth out. So she's half keg.
Right. That's awesome.
She's been upgraded. She's still only half, and she's okay with that. She's proud of her halfling heritage.
Right.
But, don't call her Half Pint. Doesn't end well. So, yeah, it's so easy. I actually am going to kind of push to the other direction and think there's a value if you do it right to put the character sheet in front of the kid. but then have a coach there to say, don't worry about anything on this unless you want to.
Right.
But that way they can look at it from time to time, and they can start to hear the words you're using and start asking what words those are on the page.
Yeah.
And as they get more proficient with reading, they get, because theoretically by, 3rd grade, they should be pretty proficient with most major words,
Right.
or getting there. They can sound them out at least. They're starting to make that reading connection, and then they can start to make the math connection on their own. And it becomes that it's the same philosophy we use in education, where you put the lowest achieving students in the room anyways, because they're going to learn just by being present. They might not learn at the level of the high achieving student, but we don't want to separate them out because they at least are exposed to it.
Right.
And eventually they start to, the more they hear the words, the more they start to think what the words mean. They internalize it pretty soon. They can use the words, and they might move up a stage into the moderately performing student. So
it just by having kids, it's so funny to see the first one, and then the second one, you're like, you're 2. You shouldn't say words like magenta and mannequin, because they absorb so much from the older one,
Yes.
So.
Well, and that's the thing about having kids too, is the second one always hits almost always
Yep.
hits benchmarks faster.
Yep.
Because they're trying to keep up with the older sibling.
Yep.
So things like, again, and let's be honest, being able to play Dungeons and Dragons at the table with the family is a benchmark. And you're probably going to find younger kids in a family are going to be the ones that are like, I can still handle this. You're only 6. I can still handle this. But I do think there is something to that exposure piece of, balancing how much you hide it and just let them talk, and how much you show them, but don't look at it for what you want to do.
Right.
If you want, we can show you where on this sheet Dad's getting the numbers from.
Right.
But for now, just tell us what you want to do.
Yep.
Tell us what you think your character would do in this situation, and get them storytelling.
Well, what's really great about that is that's kind of how you do it with big people too. For the most part. Yeah. Okay, just don't even, you got all that. Just don't even worry about it. Let's just focus on what would you do? What are you doing? What's next? You say, and then we'll kibitz like you were saying with the bow and 2 arrows, and I want to shoot 2 different targets all at once.
Yeah.
In about 3 levels.
Yeah. Someday you'll be that strong, but for now you're still just a learning. You're like a 3rd grader monk, and that's like a 5th grader monk.
Yeah. Twang.
Of course you have a bow handy. The other one too that I kind of want to put out there, I don't know what you think about this, is don't acquiesce too fast when the kids say they're done. What I've learned over the years is sometimes my kids, at least, are likely to think they're getting bored and leave or ask to leave. And I would almost see that as a good excuse to go, let's figure out why they're starting to act bored or they're saying they're bored. And we'll just sit at the table for 5 more minutes. And then whoever's running the game has 5 minutes to figure out why that one's thinking they're bored. And if they really are like, I really am done, that's one thing. But I think, at least with my kids, and maybe I'll play the, kids these days, don't seem to have as much tenacity for the things that are not immediately thrilling.
Yeah, well, and, I hate to be the old man in the room, but we are. and there's a reason that 3 hours of D&D has kind of become the standard. Even in a not streamed home game, if you go 5 hours, that's a game. That's a good chunk of game, and again, it's because it was short attention span theater. It's our brains now. We have so much going on and so many other inputs to deal with and stuff that I think that a lot of people just kind of get short circuited after a couple 3 hours,
Yeah.
The big thing is what I learned with the dungeon squad crew was 3 encounters. Make one of them, doesn't matter which, one of them like a social or environmental, and the other 2 combat, because we had and I'm gonna be a tweak sexist, but in this case the boys really, if there wasn't swords and hammers and things to hack and slash, they did get a little bored. So yeah. So I think that the one I used to do was, well, let's finish this scene. Or I would say, something like, if I could tell, I would be like, how about we take a bathroom break?
Yes.
Everybody go take 5. Let's go, go to the bathrooms, and everybody chill and get new drinks and get some snacks, and then come back at it. And then if they were at that point, if they were, I want to go play Xbox or Castle Crashers or whatever it was, the one they were always hooked on, then that was fine, like, go ahead, game's over for today. And we really did really well at finishing all the adventures, though, because the youngest at the time always wanted to keep up with the big kids, and we had at least one of the big kids and one of the middle ones who always wanted to finish the adventure. They really always wanted, they were goal oriented individuals, and they wanted, also too, my games were always very prop driven. So like in they had the one where they were finding pots of gold, and they were going with this leprechaun, and they were chasing him, and he was the final enemy, and the pots of gold would have little chocolates in them. So then as they would get, we got another pot of gold, and they'd pour out the little gold coins, and they'd divvy them up, amongst themselves, and gomp, gomp, gomp. And then, so the tricks of the trade when you're dealing with kids, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, and that's like, I was going to kind of piggyback on that. I was never big on really, I mean, if you've ever watched me stream, I do a lot of like, we'll just sketch it on the Jamboard. I don't do battle maps well. I never really got into the measuring with miniatures. But I will say something. I did pick up a Dwarven Forge mini set. It's a knockoff. It's an actual Dwarven Forge. It's a 3D print company that makes them for like a third the price. Sorry. But it has I definitely notice a difference when there's the manipulatives in front of them to move around and go, okay, I'm going to go here. I want to be here. It adds something that even if you just do cardboard stand-ups,
right, it's
better, especially with the younger kids, because it's something tangible,
right,
that it hits on. And again, this is another teacher trick. You've got and maybe this isn't true anymore, because I remember somewhere reading it's not true, but we used to believe there were auditory learners, visual learners, kinesthetic learners, and so the idea was you wanted to have as much different things happening. You want the kids to be seeing it. You want the kids to be hearing it. You want the kids to be physically interacting with it, so that the student who learns, again, I think this has changed. But at the time, the wisdom was some students really learn well by hearing instructions, and some learn better by reading the instructions quietly to themselves. So you have to provide both pathways.
Right.
And the same thing I think with kids at the table is that idea of some kids are really going to like physically getting their hands on something and going, okay, here's me, here's the monster, here's the door we're trying to protect. And so if you can give them those visuals, mine, I'm surprised, I forgot nobody has heard of these anymore, is Shrinky Dinks.
Right.
And that's another one of those fun activities of like, okay, here's a sheet. Draw on it with these colored pencils. Draw a picture of your person in the story. We're gonna bake them.
Yeah.
They'll shrink down while we have lunch. When they're cool, we'll put them on the little standees.
Yeah.
And then you can run them around. And
that's fantastic.
Yeah, and I know there's a way to make them with modern stuff. Things have,
Yeah.
there. I don't think they were silicone sheets, but they were like it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't
Um,
remember, but they were awesome. They were all kinds of fun. Hmm.
but a quick Google search shows me that yes, there is shrink plastic sheets on Amazon. You can get 165 sheets for $12. No, no, sorry, that's 165 pieces. It's 20 sheets, and then
Mm.
it comes with a little like keychain. You don't need the keychain, so skip that. Just get the
Yeah.
18 sheets for $6.
Yeah.
They
Well, and I know for a while, and I've probably got some of them down here. For a while, Pathfinder would put out these huge, like 10-pound boxes of punch out cardboard,
Mhm.
miniatures. And you could have a billion of them. And I know I can't remember what box they're in right now, but I know
But
that I have like gallon baggies of there used to be a D&D battle system, and I know I have gallon baggies of chits. I mean, just everything from dragons and horses to the teeny little chits for halflings and kobolds. And we used to do whole army battles in college, like clear out the middle of a room and put tape down for walls, and
mhm.
here just a big handful of chits. That's your army. Okay, let's go.
But it's that tactical thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you can come up with something physical, it
Yep.
adds another layer. Argument's attention span is yeah. Well, and that gets into the other side, and the second and Chef have kind of been bouncing around a little bit on um, movies running 3 hours versus
Mm.
going longer, and I do think there's a balancing act. I think 3 hours of observing something happening is brutal.
Mm.
3 hours of interaction, on the other hand, is doable,
All right.
but it has to be the right kind of interaction. So the neat thing I think about teaching kids about D&D and other tabletop RPGs is you're not really playing one game.
Mm.
You're playing lots of different games, and the critical key then for whoever's in charge is to keep changing games to keep the attention span up. So that for a while you're playing the can we guess what the evil overlord is thinking game.
Yeah.
Then you're playing the board game, can we outmaneuver the minions game.
Yeah.
Then you're playing the can we brainstorm the best kind of tent in the forest game.
Mm.
Everyone's going to design their own tent based on what their character would design, and then figure out how to roll to see who can build it.
Right.
You can actually probably get more time, but that requires you thinking in terms of I need to plan a bunch of different activities as
Yeah.
part of my D&D game.
And that's why for the younger kids, I was always like 3 encounters.
Yep.
And make one of those 3 either a social or an environmental. 2, because I knew the kids, 2 combats and 1 social or environmental, depending on what story I was trying to tell, because I had to keep the dads interested also.
Yep.
Because if they got bored, then it was kind of over.
Yeah,
They would.
once the first dad says,
So.
I'm going to go check the grill,
Mm-hmm.
that was
Yep.
kind of the end of the afternoon.
Yep.
We're moving on to something else now.
Yeah. So, yeah. Any other? Let me think. Some of my, I think I hit on the 3 or 4 that I was able to put in the tweet this morning.
I
Yeah.
will double check your tweet.
Yeah. Definitely know your audience.
Mm.
Know your players. Have your session 0, but with kids, either have that session 0 to figure out what they want, or make their characters for them, so that you don't have that. If you spend an hour making characters, you're gonna lose someone, because one of the kids is gonna rip through and be like, fighter, blah blah blah, big sword, go, and someone's gonna be like, oh, all of these spells, which spells shall I have? And yeah, and so someone will be bored and want to use their axe by the time someone chooses magic missile.
Indeed. Well, welcome, Spaghetti. Glad to have you as part of our family. We're actually like winding down our conversation today. As part of this, um, this is our the podcast for Happy Hour at the Old Timer Tavern. I forgot to update the timers, but if you want to check out what we've said so far, the easiest way is to snag us either on Apple or on Spotify. We're on everything actually. We're even on Overcast. Because they grab everything. But we're kind of moving out of this phase where we're talking about kids in D&D and sliding in to talk about, we've got some emails to get to. So like my last thoughts, I think, on the kids are, I do like the idea of talking to the kids about that, give them everything without making them follow everything.
Right.
Like pretend they don't have the character sheet, but let them see it.
Yeah.
And then rarely, if ever, tell kids no at the game table.
Right. Yes, and
you're or if you have to, well, but what if? Because sometimes they can get a little bit, even the adults,
right,
can get a little carried away with what is appropriate for the game side of the role-playing game.
Right.
But you can still get a lot of mileage out of but just tell me what you want to try to do.
Yeah.
And then we'll figure out how likely you are to do it.
Yes and no, but how about?
Yes, that kind of a thing. Like let's stay within that venue, or my personal favorite of all things DMs ever say, although most of the time it's something horrific. Well, you're always welcome to try. I guess my last kind of thought on this too is to mention I did have the opportunity to work with teens that were not mine. And I will say that was an experience that was very different because I got to see, like at that stage, a lot of them had picked up their D&D habits. It was very hard to break them of them. Which was also somewhat like challenging. So things to think about if you're the adult working with teens, you are going to be working with a different dynamic, and you might have a little more challenge with explaining with just the expectations, the session 0 stuff. We had one young man who absolutely refused to plan at the table because he had learned that the dungeon master's job is to find the holes in your plan.
Oh, adversarial DMing.
Yeah, and that was by the time you got to 14 and 15, so you've been playing Dungeons and Dragons for a couple of years with other adults. It can be a hard habit to break. So you kind of be aware of that, where even young teens and mid-teens might have already been locked into a certain mindset with the way the game should go. And you have to work to break them of that. You have to kind of, if you're going to not follow what they expect, okay, how do we help break them out of that thinking?
Yeah, give them some new options.
Give them something different to think about. So in the email bag, we got an email. Let me see I had it pulled up and I lost it. It has to do with how to divorce yourself from a group.
Old email dice bag.
Go to the mail bag. At some point, we'll have a really neat stinger audio for going to the mail bag. We're not there yet. So yeah, we got an email from yet another R. Asked Dr. D&D and the D&D relation. Dr. D&D, the D&D relationship doctor. Let's see. Joined a D&D group, have not enjoyed a session after 4 of them. They describe the environment as intense, verbose, and dragging. Which... Okay. So I'm picturing a lot of high energy conversation, a lot of high energy debate, and not a lot of action at the end of all. Like, we are going to rigorously debate what we should do for 45 minutes, and we're all passionately going to defend our reason why we're going to do what we're going to do. At the end of the 45 minutes, we still haven't decided what we're going to do.
Right.
Cool.
The other thing that I might take away from that is a lot of lore drop. Like, someone wants another bit. well, I worked in the library of Candlekeep. Don't I have some extra detail upon that? Well, roll a history check. And then another half an hour of exposition that that then gets more heavily debated. Well, that's a new clue. And
How do we, although again, my favorite game for that, hate to deviate, is there's a Sherlock Holmes RPG where you roll dice to determine how many clues you get. And then the second half, you roll dice to ask the DM questions about the clues. And some of the clues are red herrings. So there's still a lot of like player, like how do we suss this out? But your dice make it easier without the DM just telling you, anyway. The DM is doing a good job setting the scene, giving objectives. The team isn't clicking. I feel like I'm watching a movie instead of riding a roller coaster. Maybe I'm spoiled from previous experience. That can be a thing too, is everybody has like a different thing they want out of D&D. So it's entirely possible that you may just be clicking with a different group and you were hoping this group would match that and it doesn't. I will talk to the team, but I'm not sure what to recommend. I'm thinking about being more assertive, question some of the boring stuff we're doing.
So there's several ways to go about this. Also, it's and a lot of the things we're going to talk about tie back into previous episodes and other things we've said. So, definitely if you get an opportunity, go back and you'll get more bits and further on these same kind of subjects in ad nauseum in some cases.
Although we can summarize here in case you don't want to do the hour and a half with various sides conversations.
Exactly. So sometimes you just have to fire your D&D group. I mean, you just gotta bounce. And I would always say if it's a friend group and you're meeting at a table, or they're close friends and good friends, and you don't want to leave because of the friendship aspect of it, then you really do have to make your feelings and thoughts known. If not, you can bring forward your thoughts and set your boundaries, or that kind of thing. But then if it's not meeting your D&D needs, move on.
Well, and that's, I mean, they end the email asking with the statement of here, ultimately, if they're having fun as is, and I'm just not, then I'm not a good fit. I don't want to demand them to change to accommodate me. I think that there's a balancing act, because I think a D&D game can be a lot to a lot of people, while it's difficult to be everything to everyone. So it's possible too for things like, hey, can we put a timer on the non-combat encounters?
Right.
Like we all just kind of agree after 30 minutes, somebody's going to decide how to advance the story. Maybe we roll to see who has the highest charisma check, and that's the plan we follow.
Yeah.
Whatever that character says we should do.
Yeah.
And plus the neat thing is that will also then allow certain randomness, while kind of favoring the high charisma characters. But it's still, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, most charisma's between 8 and 17. That's a difference of +4, right?
-1 to
-1 to +3.
Yep.
Okay. That's a 20% swing. That's it. Yeah. That's not a 50% swing. It's not an 80% swing. It's the guy with the highest charisma will get a 20% higher value on average.
Right.
Which means on average with a D20, it's pretty random still.
Yeah.
They're not adding their proficiency bonuses. They're not don't let them say persuasion checks.
Right.
Because then it really gets scary.
Hello, the bard has decided once more what we will do.
Yeah, but it does kind of, it's thematic because it's charisma, and that's just like one option to put at the table, especially if it's a group that's really tied to crunchy numbers, because then it's when they can all kind of go, well, we have to make a decision. It's been 30 minutes. I guess, yeah, let's roll to see what plan we follow. And then we follow the plan because we do have to keep the game moving. I especially think, too, if it is a group of people that you want to be with, it's better to talk to them before you bounce because you really don't want it. Because you don't want to lie and say you don't have time for the game anymore.
Right.
Because eventually it will come up that you had time.
Mm.
If you run out of time, it's perfectly reasonable as you prune your day to prune the D&D game first.
Yeah.
That's reasonable, but then you're not lying about it. Like,
Yeah.
I ran out of time in the day. Something had to go. I think it's D&D. The other twist, if you just quietly bow out without saying anything, and it comes up later that you were unhappy and didn't say anything, some feelings might get burned by that.
Yeah.
Like, why didn't you tell us you weren't having fun? We could have. And maybe you could say, I did tell you.
Yeah.
But you, let's see, as Taki says in chat, you don't want them to delay the game on your behalf. Now, by that, do you mean that you don't want them to delay the game because you want to have a talk with them, or delay the game while you debate what to do, or so? Because I think among friends, even more than among relative strangers on the internet, I would be, well, let me put it this way: if I lost the second week of Candlekeep, if I had lost an hour to, sake of argument, Tiffany raising a concern about me not being a good DM with a barbarian and feel like I was letting the Genazis get away with too much, I'd probably be a little bit of a, this should have been an email. This should have been a Discord conversation. Why are we doing this an hour into broadcast time / game time?
Yeah.
Now, that said, if Tiffany made that same concern now, 4 months later, where we've been really good friends, we've seen each other with our makeup off, we've turned off our green screens and basically just hung out in our living rooms with each other, I'd be much more open to like, no, we're not starting until Tiffany is square away. What happened last week that's got you in a miff? We're going to, game is delayed tonight. DM is DMing. Because that's the way it works with friends. Friends, you're much more likely to say, yeah, we're here to have fun together. I do think if you are going to bow out, it's like any other breakup. You want to be graceful about it, and it's not about, for God's sakes, don't you dare say it's not you, it's me.
Yeah, or play the blame game. You suck, and I hate playing with you.
Well, it's funny. It's not you, it's me is actually usually the sentiment you want to communicate, but you just don't use those words for it. But that is the sentiment you're going for. It's like, this isn't working for me. You're all great people. I love hanging out with you. And I think, too, especially if they're friends and D&D is your primary meeting point right now, pitch an alternative meeting point and get it on the schedule. Like, we play D&D every Wednesday night. I can't play with you anymore. I'm not feeling it. How about we do every other Saturday morning? Let's do coffee.
Right.
Let's Zoom together Saturday morning starting a week from Saturday. Let's put it on our calendars now.
Right.
And get it locked in, because the other thing I know as an adult gaming, once you say, I'll call you and we'll arrange it, your children will have graduated college. And I say that knowing one of you still is like working on the first one.
Yeah.
So trust me on that.
Was there any other parts of that email that we didn't really hit?
That's the bulk of it.
Okay, good. Yeah, I really just communicate if you can, and if it's just not going to work, I mean, that's fine. It just didn't work.
It happens. I do think though, you do want to talk to the group about what they're enjoying and bring what you're enjoying. I like when this happens. I love when this happened. And if you're looking back at it and you're going, there's nothing that happened that I liked, then maybe you shouldn't be so kind in your feedback, because maybe that is something worth bringing up all by its onesome.
Yeah.
Is the, hey, I didn't have fun. I still have yet to have fun.
Right.
That should be definitely to any DM worth their salt, or any game group. worth their salt. That should be a huge red flag.
Yeah. One thing that I will say mechanically is if you do a an egg timer or like a sand dial kind of thing, and you're like, okay guys, you got this 3-minute sand hourglass to make your move. That's all the planning time you have. It adds tension to the game, and it also ramps up the okay, yeah, we got kibitz. Okay, yeah, let's do that. People will acquiesce if they know they're on the timer. So
Yep. Speaking of which, too, I'm going back, like the rundown on ESPN. Exactly. Well, and that's one too. I'll admit I have not done a lot with my Sunday group, because so far they haven't had a lot of pressed decisions. They've had time to mull things over. The closest we got was last week, which I'll talk more in depth at the end, where it was, okay, do you take a long rest or do you pursue them?
Right.
And with Candlekeep is a very lightweight game. So there hasn't also, again, not been that big time crunch, but that's a good thing. And it goes into, I'm actually running a workshop. I don't know why I'm running a workshop on storytelling. And the style of storytelling I'm most familiar with is the Moth format from NPR. And they talk about, for a Moth story slam, because Moth is a part of the NPR network. They put on these productions. And the people they bring on the main stage, the big names that tell stories, have unlimited time to tell their story. They tell their story because they're actors or professional comedians and yada yada. As you're working your way through as someone that wants to be part of it, they send you to what's called a story slam, and you get 4 minutes,
right,
to tell your story, and that is not a lot of time. Like you think, 4 minutes, that's a chunk of time. I can tell. And you realize after your first rehearsal, you're still laying out the, what was going on in the world at the time of your story. And you're about to start telling the story proper. And you're like, holy crap, I'm 2 minutes in. I haven't actually gotten to the story yet. I'm just telling you who my girlfriend was at the time because, she factors into my decision making, and you really start to hone in on how do I get to the big ideas quickly. But yeah, like on ESPN with timers on the topics, I think there's a lot of value in that. And you can even go crazy with the meta game. If you want to clip this or come back to it later with a highlighter or whatever, is the idea too of if you have you can make an intelligence check to double the timer.
Yep.
Because you have a high intelligence. You're used to thinking quickly,
right,
which means we can accommodate that by giving you more time to think. You can make a wisdom check to stop the timer and ask the dungeon master a yes or no question.
Yeah, exactly. You can make like you're saying a meta game out of it, or the initial timer is everyone's intelligence bonuses. Oh, barbarian -2, huh?
That hurts the party.
Yeah, that's 2 minutes off. That's situation.
And it mechanically works though, because if you have to keep re-explaining things, and let's be honest, everyone is awesome in their own way, but any team that you have to explain something a couple of times because one person isn't as proficient in whatever we're talking about or doesn't process at the same rate is going to spend more time on it. Yeah. That's just the way it works. It's why teachers often give different timelines for assignments based on where students are.
Yeah.
I feel like I've done more talking about teaching than anything else today.
But really and truly, I mean, what is DMing? I mean,
it's hell.
It is control.
That's what it is.
It's controlling a narrative in a group setting that really is, it's leadership or teaching. They're,
they overlap a lot between those. So that's just another thing to kind of think about as you. But you can come back to this segment of today's stream. It'll be on YouTube later.
Mm.
And you can like look at this meta game of
Mm.
putting that timer there. And I can think of some groups that if you can write the rules or the DM can put
Yeah.
down these are the rules.
Yep.
Some players will go, okay, let's try it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not just we're going to go until so and so says she's fed up with our debate.
Yeah, I hate to say, but I am one of those players. If I'm playing a certain type of character, my Pendragon story is always the one I go back to. These guys who are used to playing D&D were playing Pendragon. It's not D&D, and they wanted to always come up with these elaborate plans. And as they were doing that, Sir Fergus from the north would just kind of go, "Don't anyone know how to hunt?" and and then he would just like, "There, we'll go into the woods. The dragons in the woods. They'll find us, or we'll find them." Kind of, it just make me crazy.
I hear you. So there's our thoughts on that. Hopefully you can take something away from that if you happen to catch this episode. And keep us posted. Let us know how it went. Let us know if you were able to find a positive outcome or if you had to fall back on maybe the old, how about we just get together for Saturday morning coffee?
Mm-hmm.
If you're also, I'm going back through our catalog. I would definitely give a listen. If you haven't, throw in your podcast collection episode 10, Running Session 0.
Mm.
You might find some stuff in there worth sharing, or you can refer it to someone as an episode of ours to go back to and say, hey, these guys had some interesting ideas about, what we want out of a game. That could be kind of a fun thing to look at, to talk about what we all expect from the game, what we want, how we're going to do this. Because a lot of times things like decision-making process are good. Now that you know it might be a problem, it's good for a second session 0 topic.
Mm-hmm.
Like it might, I can't imagine this would come up in a session 0 at my table generally.
Right.
But I do think if someone were to come to me and say, I'm kind of bored with our game, I'm thinking I might quit and let you guys just do your own thing, I'd say, okay, let's have another session 0 and talk about some ideas for how you're not bored.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah.
How was your week, by the way? Let's get to our week in gaming and our week coming up. We're at that phase of the show.
So it's I was at so we're in hiatus because of the holidays and stuff from Thursday nights, but we will be heading into Thursday night will be our opening of Monster Noir using the City of Mists rule set. So this is episode 1, issue 1. Good time to jump in. That's Thursday.
And that's
Indoor
over
Adventures.
on Indie?
Indoor Adventures, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. So we'll be doing that. And I didn't have anything because I went to family camp this weekend.
How was family camp?
It was good. We played Terraforming Mars. We played Lockdown. We played.
Yeah, we've been playing Lockdown for 18 months.
Yeah, but a comedian wrote a card game about it. We played Muffin Time
because of course he did.
Yeah, and we played a bunch of board game type stuff. So, which it's the first time in over a year that we sat across the table from anyone other than ourselves and played games. So it was fantastic, and I would say be safe still, but have fun.
Yeah, well, that's kind of where we are too with a lot of things. We're starting to get together more and more with friends that have all been vaccinated and are still behaving very well. But we are doing those get-togethers. So last Tuesday we had our first family D&D game.
That's right.
We started Waterdeep. Not Waterdeep. Waterdeep Dragon Heist was it. And they've had their fight in the Yawning Portal. And Kitty K's character had no allies on her character sheet. So her mission for the night was to write down names in the ally box. That was her mission. She wanted to add allies. And so when it's like, well, this guy wants to hire you to go find his lost friend, she's like, does that mean I count him as an ally? I said, it will if you find the friend. She's like, I'm in. Do you want to get paid? Nope. I just want an ally. I'm like, okay. Off you go.
That's gorgeous. I love it.
And I'm rather impressed with myself for my ability to build the yawning portal with the pieces I had from this set. The company's Ender Toys. I strongly recommend it. They have their stuff for sale on Amazon, so you can, if you're an Amazon Prime person, all free shipping.
Nice.
And they run about a third the price of the Dwarven Forge stuff, but they come unpainted. That's probably why they run the price they do. But they're durable. They're solid. I actually didn't even clip them together. I just set them all down. I even skipped the clips, and as long as you're not like knocking the table around, it's held up just fine. We did that Tuesday. Wednesday, Saturday night last week, we did the Pirate one-shot game, which was a ton of fun. And Raven and Reluctant Hermit are coming back this Saturday for another one-shot adventure that I'm currently calling The Valley of Plenty. And it'll make sense early on as to why it's called that, and it's more from an ironic point of view. Or as one guy said, I said it's called Valley of Plenty. He goes, oh, it's going to have like not that Valley of Plenty. Okay, let's just be clear here. It's a darker version of that. And I got some confirmations for some players there. We are currently negotiating what's going to happen with our Wednesday night game. But that's because the move to Sweden has not been as smooth as everyone had hoped.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're still kind of negotiating that. And then Sunday, I'm very proud of this. I decided I didn't. Here was the dilemma I had. I want something different from Curse of Strahd as a super weapon. Like, I'll be honest, you get a lightsaber feels kind of like, I don't know, it feels weird.
Right.
So instead, I gave the characters a wooden shaft, but it's all decorated as a grip. And whoever wields it gets the weapon that they need. So when the ranger's fiddling with it, he gets these big bursts of light that pop out and let him draw up arrows of divine energy.
Right.
When the mage is holding it, she gets a staff. The fighter got the sword, and then the party paladin actually got a small flaring sun at the end of a glowing chain.
Oh,
so he got he had a flail.
Yeah, the sun flail.
The sun flail. And I'm like, and then the best part is it got me out of a little behind the screen secret. Yeah. I don't have to figure out who's supposed to get the weapon.
Right.
I'm like, the party can figure out how they want to dole this out because it will attune to them. Because all the weapon wants is to kill Strahd. It doesn't care what it looks like.
Right.
It wants revenge. So it's like, boom, done. And the sun flail, I still think is one of those, like, that will come up later. I want to do that. The idea that you take out this shaft, a sun forms on the tip, and then once it's fully formed, drops on the chain. Like that, I would pay money for that animation, just to watch that happen and go, okay, it's going to get real now, which is so much, I think, cooler than that the lightsaber effect gives you. So that was my Sunday night group. We finally got back together again. I think we're on track to finish before the two players that are expecting their first baby have to stop because of parenting.
Right.
I think we're going to actually get through there. And congratulations to Nebula and Esteki for that. Nebula announced on Friday that she is expecting, and they're expecting a girl.
Nice.
And I'm really excited for that for them because that is such a fun journey to be on.
Yeah.
And you definitely come keep us posted because we have all the ideas. We might even do we should do like a bachelor party episode where we just basically dole out dad advice for an hour. Like, forget the D&D for this week. We got a guy that's going to have a kid.
Yep.
We need to break him in quick.
Yeah, baby boot camp, man.
Amen
baby
to
boot
that.
Camp.
I've got diapers and dolls around here somewhere. That's what happens when one of your kids is as well. It could be either, but when you have a girl, you're more likely to have diapers and dolls in the house. Just saying. So
I used to always say that my house looked like orcish ballerinas attacked my house because there was, you know, dragons in the Barbie castle and
yep,
knights over here,
yep.
so
That's the product. There was
mhm,
a day I still remember where my GI Joe set up a defensive perimeter around the Barbie Dream Home.
mhm, mhm.
Complete with chevaux de frise and we had like a battle trench at one spot. We'd figured out where to dig in the tank with all the missiles on the back of it. Oh yeah, that's what you do. You'll do
Yeah,
anything. You'll do anything for an excuse to play with somebody.
yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, if you're listening to the podcast, please, before you take off, consider giving a review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. Helps other people find our show and become part of our family. Thank you for the download, and we'll see you next week. Until that next refresh on your podcast app, stay safe. For everybody else that's hanging out here, let's figure out where the hand. You failed the will save. Did I though? Did I? We have enough bodies. I should send you somewhere. I always feel if we can break more than just the two of us watching our own stream, we should send them somewhere.
All right.
Let's see where we can ship them off to hang out. That can't be right. There's no way he is still on. Let me check a different screen. It just told me that Ravenarmed is currently streaming. I'm like, there's no way he is streaming at 6:30 in the evening. That's not his schedule. So I must have an outdated list. Well, let's go. Hang on, mute that. Let's go over and say hi to. Decisions. You know what? Let's go. Oh, you know what, guys? You have to go check this out. Nerd Central, who is a follower, and he was playing Solasta last week, and he came in and raided me. We're going to return the favor because he's not playing Solasta. His listed game is Tailspire.
Nice.
And you got to see this in action. I am ready to use this more, but if nothing else, you got to hang out and check this system out. I think he's building in it. So actually, I think Gray and I are going to pop over there for a few minutes, chat there, hang out, check it out with them, come back, and then do our debrief.
Woo-hoo.
So, but thank you for being part of the live show. Hopefully, y'all got something out of our talk today. If you have ideas for future shows, feel free to hit us on the emails or on the Twitters. Wow, literally hit us.
Well, I was going to say, don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube, hit like, subscribe, click. So
that's fair. The other reason I changed my green screen is I have this green T-shirt that says like, subscribe, follow that I got for Father's Day, but I can't wear it on stream with a green screen. I have to shift over to a blue screen.
Right.
And that's on my list of things to work on this week is continue to revise my home setup. All right, I'm going to push the go now. We'll see you guys next week back here for happy hour. Thursday night at Indoor Adventurers. Definitely pop in there. Tomorrow night, be back here at 7. Something's going to happen. Might not be D&D. It might just be me and my 3 of my players just talking. But we're going to do something. We'll see y'all then. Till then, stay safe. Okay, there goes the raid button. All right, and then I'm going to raid is confirmed.